Welcome to Sports Babes. Does your team have what it takes to win it all? Let's find out.
All right, we've got Tommy Walden here again with us at Sports Babes. We picked his brain for our brackets. Now it's time to pick his brain as far as the insight into the tournament. You know, game time, what do we need to look at here to determine who's going to end up in that final game?
Yeah, because it's all about my bracket right now, and this is what I need to know. I've got Florida, Carolina going in there. I've got a team with experience, and I've got a team with tremendous talent. Go Tar Heels. Which team would you want to be on?
I think talent's what you have to go with in this day and age, because you're going to have games where you're off, and you need to have other guys that you can rely on. And when you go 10 deep, you know, there's bound to be somebody who can step up and make a play for you, or a couple plays down the line.
But isn't leadership also important here? I mean, you know, we see these teams time and time again. There always needs to be that one go-to guy who can step up at the big moment and knock down the shot to bring them to the next round. I mean,
the Joaquin.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. And on a team like Florida, you actually have a couple guys that can make big shots. Not saying that Florida's not talented. They probably just aren't as talented as North Carolina.
The first NCAA championship tournament was played in 1939 and won by the University of Oregon Ducks. Back then, there were only 8 teams in the tournament.
All right, putting you on the spot, when you played, who was the big leader on the team?
No question, it was Ed O'Bannon, the player of the year the next year. I mean,
Good
you know,
leader.
we were down by, you know, almost 30 points to Tulsa in the first round, a team we should have beat. He came in the locker room, and you could just tell he came in and threw a desk across the room, and it was just
He did a Bobby Knight?
He did a Bobby Knight. Didn't throw it at anybody, but he threw it across the room, and it just showed you right then and there. You knew that this was the guy that you look for leadership, and you look toward to take you to that next level, and that's what he did the following year.
Now, speaking of a Bobby Knight, what about the coaching? How important is it that coach? I mean, I think I read somewhere it was like the 17 of the 21 coaches that have won the last championships all had previous Final Four experience. So do you want the coach with the experience? Do you want that Dean Smith in there, or do you want that young, fiery, feisty coach?
Well, you look at a guy like Billy Donovan, the head coach of Florida. You know, he's a fiery guy. He doesn't let his players rest on their laurels from last year. He's all about, you know what, that's over and done with. We won that championship, that's done. You know, and he's a disciple of Rick Pitino. So, you know, you get a little bit of mix. He's that young guy, the young fiery guy, but then he also has that old mentality kind of from Rick Pitino. So I think nowadays you're looking for a little bit of both. But when it comes down to it, you want a guy who's going to be prepared, who's going to make adjustments at halftime, because that's what it's all about in the tournament. You're going to have a half where you're off. You got to be able to do something in the second half to rectify that.
First men's college basketball game was played on January 18, 1896. It was between the University of Chicago and the University of Iowa. The score wasn't mind-blowing, 15-12.
Obviously, it's going to go from 65 down to 4 and then to the 2. So who's playing on April 2nd?
I have Florida, the wily veterans of juniors, and I have Georgetown. I just think Georgetown plays a solid brand of defense, that Big East tough defense, and that's what you need. You're going to have a couple games where you struggle, and the defensive teams seem to always come out. And I just think that they have the talent. They go 8 deep. You know, you got Jeff Green, the Big East Player of the Year. Hibbert, you know, is a space eater, as they call him.
They got a tough bracket to come out of, though. Don't you think they might be a little, you know, worn out by the time they get to that final game?
I think actually they may benefit from the tough bracket in that North Carolina will have a more difficult time with Marquette and I think Texas, and then they'll have to face Georgetown. You know, I think that's going to wear on North Carolina a lot more than what Georgetown has to do. After all, it is North Carolina.
I was going to say, and I would say we want to invite you back because you didn't pick them, but we will.
I appreciate that.
Well, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's wrap things up and head it over to some clutch time.
All right, we heard Tommy's picks, so we booted him. Time to get the expert opinions. And here's my clutch time for the final 2 standing. It's going to be Carolina. It's going to be Florida. Unfortunately, never done this before. I got to go with Florida. I think I'm going to go with the experience. Billy Donovan's got those guys right where he needs them to be. I just hope Carolina comes back next year. Please, nobody go to the NBA.
All right, and my final 2 picks are going to have to go for teams coming out of the West and the South, and that is Kansas and Ohio State. You know, I've been writing the Kansas thing because they've just looked so phenomenal in the past couple weeks, and then I've got Ohio State because of Greg Oden. I think he is just going to be a monster in this tournament, and he's going to play his way into the #1 pick for this year's NBA draft. That's all for Sports Babes, and join us again next time at sportsbabestv.com.